Welcome to Big City, Small Town, the weekly podcast all about San Antonio and the people who make it go and grow. I'm your host, Bob Rivard. This week's guest is mayoral candidate Rolando Pablos, who has been on the podcast once already. But now that we are in the runoff, we invited the two runoff candidates, Gina Ortiz Jones and Rolando Pablos, back on. Rolando Pablos said yes. Gina Ortiz Jones' campaign said no. So here we go. This will be the last podcast on the mayoral race. And for those of you that are not yet Monday Musing newsletter subscribers, I want to make a pitch that you sign up today. Just go to bigcitysmalltown.com on our homepage and put your email in. No cost, no spam. And you'll get on my newsletter in time to read my Monday one coming up, where I will share my final thoughts about this mayoral contest. Regular listeners and watchers of the podcast know that we endorsed Beto in the first round, but Beto is no longer a candidate, and it's time to make a decision. Early voting starts Tuesday, so my Monday newsletter will have my last thoughts on the mayor's race. Thanks for joining us. And Rolando Pablos, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. I will always come on.
That's a deal. I should probably say that, you were born in Mexico. Your parents immigrated to Texas. You're rooted in San Antonio. You went to St. Mary's Law School. You're an attorney. I think people most associate you with some of your high-profile political appointments, notably being Secretary of State, and your interest in economic development, which has been a key part of your campaign to date. But the fact is, long before that, you were a practicing attorney here in San Antonio. So anything else about your biography that you want to share with people who may not have tuned in until now?
Yes, I've actually run 3 state agencies. You mentioned Secretary of State. I was also on the Public Utility Commission, regulating electricity.
What years were that?
Communication, 11, 12, right
okay.
there. And I was also on the Texas Racing Commission. That's a law enforcement regulatory body that regulates dog and horse racing, pari-mutuel betting here in Texas.
Who knew?
Who knew, right? We have a Selma out here. The Selma track.
Sure. Remind people when you served as Secretary of State.
I served for the entirety of 17 and 18.
Okay.
Yeah. 2 years. That's normal. That's standard.
Right.
And that's what I committed to doing.
Well, let's talk about the campaign. And it's been a long one. I'm sure you're feeling it more than we are.
We're stronger than ever.
Particularly with the runoff, but we're in the home stretch.
Yeah.
What feels different to you about yourself, your campaign, the city, compared to the day you announced? What have you learned on the campaign trail?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. So whenever I first, started talking to folks, friends about the idea of running, I got mixed reactions from folks, but I knew that I really wanted to do this. And so as I progressed through this almost last year and a half, that's what it's been, the support that's been growing, the momentum that's been growing, I think has been the most surprising, especially obviously after the runoff. After the runoff, the outpouring of support has been incredible from all folks from the community. I mean, we are truly building a broad-based coalition. It feels special, and I'm honored because for people to approach you who you don't know, have never met, who want to come on board and participate in this movement, I mean, it's an honor.
Your public service has been aligned with the Republican Party, Gina Ortiz Jones with the Democratic Party. My producer, Corey Ames, and I were hypothesizing after the first round that maybe the nature of that would somehow attract more voters. We've had such a dismal level of participation in local elections compared to how people vote in the state and national elections. I just wonder how you feel about the likelihood of a more robust turnout in the runoff than in the first round. We don't really have the kind of independent polling in our city that would give us a real measure. And at this stage, I don't feel like I have any idea what's going to happen.
Welcome to the club. No, I'm just kidding. Well, let me go back to your initial comment about my public service. It hasn't all been partisan. I served under Phil Hardberger and Ed Garza here in town.
Okay.
If you go onto my website, pablosformayor.com, you'll see all of my public service, particularly here in San Antonio. I have volunteered half my time, my entire career. So you look at all the boards and commissions, nonprofits that I've been a part of here. I think that also needs to be accounted for when we're talking about my public service. So it's broader than just those 3 agencies, those 3 appointments that the governor's put me on. I've done a lot of work here locally.
Well, let me stop you right there because people do associate you more with some high-level state appointments you've had. So talk about some of the things you've done locally. I should say that I think you've been on the Greater SATX Economic Development Board.
I've been on the executive committee of Greater SATX. I served as chairman of the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber.
That's right. What year was that?
09, 010. Actually, it was 2 years. It was kind of combined with Fernando Reyes, so served 2 years. I brought Ramiro Cavazos on board.
Okay.
And that's when we moved the chamber to the Pearl. We got 5-star accreditation during my tenure. We worked with Charlie, with St. Mary's University to try to bring
President Cottrell.
Sorry, I drew
That's all right.
Charlie Cottrell, and we created the Saber Institute. So we did all that through there. I've been a professor at UTSA, professor of tourism. I brought the Conrad Hilton College of Hotel Restaurant Management, and I was a professor there, hospitality law. I've served, for Phil Hardberger, I was on the Homelessness Task Force. I served on the SPADA committee. I was actually chairman when we implemented the SPADA ordinance for small business here in town. And the list is long. I just rolled off of Morgan's Wonderland 5 years. I serve on the board of Special Olympics Texas. I still do that right now. So my community service is long, extensive, and it's beyond reproach. Remember the Free Trade Alliance. I chair the Free Trade Alliance. Tom Frost, Mr. Frost asked me to serve there. So all that, has nothing to do with partisan. It has to do with my love for this community and me giving back to this community just like I want to give back now. I just want to do it in a different way where now, after all these years, my entire career of developing a skill set that will benefit the community, I believe, in economic development, in business, international trade, I'll be able to bring all that to the table. And so this is where we are now. As to where we believe we are, I think we're in a great position. No one can really predict right now. There'll probably be some polls out there that are coming out, but we believe that we're in a great position to take this.
All right. And we're going to talk a lot about economic development. And do I recall that you somehow studied hospitality before you became a lawyer? Is that?
I did.
That's in the back of my mind.
Yeah, I did. And so I'll tell you, I worked in restaurants practically all through school.
Okay.
My parents, they weren't able to pay our entire way. I paid myself. I went through school with grants and loans, but I also had to, work to pay for my room and board. So I did some work study at St. Mary's at the beginning. And then I found really good work in restaurants, especially because I was bilingual. I was able to work with the kitchen guys, and then eventually, I washed dishes and did cooking. And then eventually I moved to the dining room side and I cleaned tables, but then I got promoted to waiter. And so I waited tables for a long time. That's how Laura and I met, my wife and I met. But then when she was a dental student, she got admitted to the Houston orthodontic program at the UT Health Science Center in Houston. We moved to Houston, and that's when I discovered that the University of Houston at the Conrad Hilton College offered a master's in hospitality. And I fell in love with it because I didn't realize that you could actually study what I've been working all these years. Well, I've been working on all these years. So I got a master's in hospitality management with a specialty in gaming, and hence that's how my first job came to be. And also that's why I did the racing commission. Where's that fit?
And is your wife a practicing orthodontist?
So Laura had a thriving practice, orthodontic practice. But when Mia, our third born, came to this world, she was born with Down syndrome. So at that moment, we decided that Laura should stay home. Early childhood intervention is very important. And she sold her practice. And it broke her heart because she just loved her patients. And so she'd been staying home since. But now Laura's a public school teacher. She's teaching dentistry at Health Careers High School.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like her priorities were right anyway, and I can now understand why you were on the board of Morgan's Wonderland.
Yes, absolutely.
And we have a lot of respect for Gordon Hartman and what he's accomplished out there and continues to expand.
Yes. Yesterday he celebrated Morgan celebrating 15 years.
That's hard to believe.
They had a quinceañera yesterday.
That's remarkable. Let's talk a little bit about hospitality, not just hospitality, but about economic development, and whether you think a mayor in the mayor's role is essential to the work that basically we're looking at greater SATX to do. And by the way, they absorbed the Free Trade Alliance some years ago, right? So Mexico is in their portfolio, and I want to talk to you about that because you were born there, you're bilingual, you're bicultural, and I'm one, and I've said this frequently on the podcast over the years, that I don't think the city has tended the personal relationships in Mexico that we originally established about the time when the North American Free Trade Agreement was negotiated and initialed here, right here in San Antonio, and that there's a lot more opportunity south of our border, down 35, than we've realized, and that more work needs to be done in that area. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. But do you think the mayor plays more than just a handshake role in economic development? Do you see yourself somehow playing a key role? And there's been a lot of conversation about we made tremendous progress under Jenna Salcedo Herrera from the era of Mario Hernandez and the San Antonio Economic Development Foundation. We have JCB coming online here. That's huge. We've seen a lot of advanced manufacturing centered in and around Port San Antonio, but we've also seen way more corporate relocations or expansions from the West Coast hitting Austin and Dallas and Houston. So I wonder what your thoughts are about the big picture going forward.
Yeah, I will be fully hands-on on economic development. That is my area of expertise. I've done it at the state level, as Secretary of State. I travel the world promoting Texas, bringing billions of dollars and thousands of jobs to Texas. I did it in El Paso at the Borderplex Alliance. That was a binational economic development organization, kind of like Greater SATX, but it was binational, it was regional. So yes, absolutely. I will get fully involved and immersed in economic development because it's really the mayor, given our form of government, the city manager, runs the city, but the mayor is really the salesperson for the community. I plan to be traveling with the business community, with whomever wants to come with us to promote San Antonio, to bring investment. And particularly Mexico. Mexico needs to be our top priority. We really shouldn't focus on trying to sell ourselves elsewhere other than Mexico and Canada, at least from a priorities perspective. Obviously, if someone from Japan wants to come here, they're welcome. But our efforts, our capital needs to be spent in promoting trade relationships with Canada and Mexico, primarily with Mexico, because Mexico is our number one trade partner. I've been doing business in Mexico for 25 years. We have offices in Monterrey. I think the relationship between San Antonio and Monterrey needs to be amped up. We have a lot of those executives with homes here, and we have the relationships. I have the relationships in Mexico, not only in the private sector, but also in government at all levels. And I believe that there are many Mexican companies that are looking to come to Texas, but just don't have that platform. And they really don't see themselves going to Houston or Dallas. And so San Antonio is a perfect place. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to go all in with Greater SATX and whoever else. The county, we need to cooperate with the county. But the objective here, one of my top objectives is to focus on bringing in investment, high-paying jobs to this great community.
Do you think the next mayor is handcuffed by tariffs and that we're going to see, let's just talk about the cost of producing a Toyota Sequoia or Tundra here, where we see those trains coming up from Mexico with the assembled chassis and other parts in our supplier community are coming up from northern Mexico, and they're all going to get at least 10% on them, I think, maybe more.
Well, we are very adaptable as a community. We can adapt. But look, the USMCA is going to be renegotiated in 26, and I will be mayor when that happens. And so I plan to be part of those negotiations. I was part of the original USMCA negotiations. And so I know how to get in there and really fight for what we believe is rightly ours. And, our state relies on international trade with Mexico. So we have to make sure that whatever provisions we adjust favor us. And look, I think that at the end of the day, working with the president, we can make sure that our USMCA provisions wash out those tariffs, and we can get there. I have no problem believing that that is possible.
So how about our education outcomes and how that affects economic development and the perceptions versus the reality, if there is a difference in how people regard our workforce as either a strong workforce that's continually getting better, or does that remain our Achilles heel? You have a wife who's at a very high-performing magnet school or in-district charter, but the outcomes in our school districts across the board are not anywhere near what we want, and the numbers post-pandemic are pretty disturbing. We're really still struggling to recover to pre-pandemic levels, and I wonder what you think about all of our...
Look, there's perception and then there's reality. And right now, if you go outside San Antonio, we're perceived as a low-wage, low-skill community, and that's a harsh truth to swallow, right? But we also have a lot of well-educated individuals. We have more college students here than in Austin. So
That's hard to believe.
It's hard to believe, but it's true. We have great students graduating from our colleges. The problem is that they're leaving.
Mm-hmm.
We have brain drain. So, we can't be so harsh on ourselves into thinking that our students are getting educated, our children are getting educated. So obviously, some are having a tough time graduating from high school, and we have to help them. We have to work with those school districts to make sure that they have the funding needed to be able to turn their fortunes around. But we have tremendous talent coming out of San Antonio. The only problem is that we don't have those companies coming here that they could then work for. They have to go elsewhere to find those great paying jobs. And it happens in my family, my children. Christina lives in Houston. David actually found a job in San Antonio, so he's moving back. He's going to be working with Turner Construction. So he is starting his career. Did you see that article the other day that this was the worst place to start a career? Those are the perceptions that I want to fend off, because when I see those articles, well, as mayor, I will call a press conference and push back, because if we keep pushing back on all that negativity, then we'll fight the perception and talk about the reality of this wonderful place. Do we have an education outcomes problem? Absolutely. Can we fix it? Yes. We have 17 school districts or so. We're balkanized as a community, 10 city districts, 17 school districts. My goal would be, well, how can we come together and obviously take advantage of efficiencies, especially like in things like purchasing and those things, but also in setting goals for outcomes. The city can get involved in many different ways. We can't be scapegoating our teachers or our school districts. We have to bring parents in, and we have to work in Austin in making sure that we get the right funding. So I will leverage my relationships in Austin to be able to get those outcomes that we want for our school districts here. But a lot of it has to do with culture, making sure that our people understand the value of an education. Here's the problem. We're in a poverty cycle right now where many people are living paycheck to paycheck. A lot of them are in desperation mode, and when you're in desperation mode, when you're in survival mode, you don't think about tomorrow. You think about today. And so we have to make sure that our families get out of desperation mode. And the way to do that is by bringing quality jobs that pay more. And once they're stabilized and we move them, into the middle class, then I think we can get there. And so the objective is to take that 18% that is living in poverty and move them into the middle class. And the only way you're going to do that is with education and with bringing in high-paying jobs. And that's really how I plan to do that.
So let's talk about a couple of existing programs at the city level that the next mayor will have the opportunity to continue, to discontinue, or to modify. One would be the first housing bond that voters ever approved in the 2022 bond. I believe that was $150 million. And that is mostly the city partnering with private sector developers and letting them build the housing, and the city's not getting into the business of building housing. People, I think, by and large, consider that quite a successful program, but in the scheme of things, not anywhere near enough. And I assume the conversation about the 2027 bond is going to include people for and against a more robust sum of money in that regard. And the other one I would ask you about, which looked very promising on the outside, but has been very disappointing in the actual results, in my personal view, is Ready to Work, where the Mayor Nirenberg anticipated 40,000 people going through a pipeline being given new job skills that would allow them to move into jobs with participating employers here at much higher wages. And what we've seen, I think, are very low numbers of people that have actually participated and graduated from the program and gotten into jobs. And the average salary, I think, remains under $20 an hour. So that's not very impressive. But there are people that believe that the program could produce results, but it would have to be changed. I'm kind of wondering whether or not it'll be continued.
Look, I was very supportive of the idea when I spoke to Ron about it, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, whenever it was. I did a video supporting it. And I think it's a great idea. It's a great concept. We need to invest in not only in educating, our workforce, but also in getting them jobs. So that's one of the missing pieces in this formula, is that we're upskilling them, but to what? So, okay, fine, they get out, and then is there a job waiting for them? So we have to balance those two things. So, I'm good with spending taxpayer money on upskilling, like Ready to Work, but we also have to spend taxpayer money in attracting jobs here. Now, with respect to the actual project itself or the program itself, it was mismanaged. Let's just put that behind us. Like, okay, fine, it was mismanaged. Let's take it and run with it, but now under a different type of management. Let's try to make it work, because we're already this far. To scrap it just for sake of scrapping it, I don't think is a good idea. I think we should take a look at it, and we need to come in and implement, just like almost like a turnaround that you would have in the corporate world. Let's bring a turnaround specialist that turn that program around, because I think that if it works at peak efficiency, it'll be extremely effective. And so I'm committed to looking at that.
And we don't need to go over all the numbers and data on the housing crisis that we've seen accelerate during the pandemic, but obviously a lot of people suddenly can't afford to buy a house anymore with interest rates, and that's driven rents way up and created an environment where a lot of these working poor people that you talk about, who are paycheck to paycheck, are suddenly facing the risk of losing their home, being evicted. Evictions are up. That's a matter of fact. Yeah. So do you support continuing with the housing bond and increasing it?
Look, I'm of the belief that government isn't always the only answer. And let me just propose an idea to you. Why not, when we talk about affordability, housing affordability, why don't we also work on improving people's income so they can afford a home? So I'm all for working in dual tracks. So let's work on getting them higher paying jobs so they can afford a home. And then with respect to the actual house itself and how to go about getting it, look, there are many factors that play in. You mentioned one is interest rates, inflation for construction costs, all those things play in. But what is government doing, and what can it also do to get rid of some of these issues that are preventing housing from going up, like land use, zoning? Let's look at those barriers that are already in place, that if we just remove them, then maybe we can make housing more affordable as well. We have restrictions, we have zoning restrictions, we have these additional dwellings that we can put in people's homes. A lot of these HOAs don't allow it. So let's get creative in looking at the impediments first and foremost, because that's probably the easiest and cheapest thing to do. Is let's get rid of some of these impediments that will allow me to build a little dwelling home for my mom in my backyard. And then that takes that issue out of the way. The other thing is property taxes. And I proposed a property taxpayer program, I'm calling it a taxpayer timeout, where we freeze property taxes for everybody and not allow our city manager to budget for next year on the anticipated tax increases. Because that's what he does, is he figures how much more money he's going to get from anticipated, valuations and increases. And then he budgets for that, and it's just this vicious cycle, and it's an upward spiral of more and more taxation. why not just freeze it today and force our city manager to live within his means of today? That gives us a break on taxes, and then maybe that allows a lot of these individuals who are getting forced out of their homes to stay in their home. Nobody should be pushed out of their homes, especially for things like that, especially for property taxes. Right now you've got exemptions and all that, but I'm talking about for every homeowner, making sure that we can freeze property taxes, because it's really the valuations that are driving everything, And I sat on the property appraisal task force for Governor Perry. We went around the state talking about this particular issue, and that was many years ago, and it still hasn't been resolved.
Well, the state is coming forward with some. They're raising, the homestead exemption. They're giving a little sum to people over 65, I think. So people are going to get a little bit of a break there. I want to push back though, because I mean we're all for increased wages, but you've got a safety net challenge right now where people are in crisis. There's almost 70,000 names on the Opportunity Home San Antonio waiting list for either vouchers or Section 8 housing, some sort of assistance. And our homeless population has gone up, and almost every police officer you talk to on the street will tell you there's an acute shortage of permanent supportive housing. Yep. And we got a couple of thousand people that are either acutely mentally ill or suffering from drug addiction or both. And so they don't fit into the Haven for Hope or any of these other sobriety-based programs, and they don't have anywhere to take them except the Bexar County Jail to get them off the streets. And so we're in a crisis moment that needs more immediate attention, I think, than the very sensible longer-term solutions you're proposing.
Yeah, I'm not saying not to address those issues. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've worked with Haven for Hope for 15 years. I understand the homelessness issue and the challenges around that. I've even proposed a customized approach. We have to take a look at almost every individual to see what their specific needs are. But if there's this long list of people waiting for public housing, then the solution is removing the barriers to constructing more. And a lot of people don't want concentrated affordable housing in their backyard. And I understand. But at the same time, what are some creative solutions that we haven't thought of? And I've looked at the tremendous real estate inventory that our local governments have. They have 5 little pieces of land, 5 acres, 2, 3 acres,
a lot of it
that we're having to pay to maintain. So why not just gift these to the developers so they can put in affordable housing in there? It'll be spread out over the city. The cost of that land is their profit margin, and everybody wins. And now we've got a piece of property that's actually being put to produce something, which is a home, a dignified home for somebody. Right now, we just have lots everywhere that are just sitting there, and we're spending money on maintaining them. That's what Kirk Watson did in Austin. And this is not a novel idea. This is something that he did in all those high rises you see in Austin. That used to be a trash heap. And he talked about giving away the piece of land to the developers. And all of a sudden, he created the incentive for construction, and look at what's going on over there.
Rolando, you mentioned City Manager Eric Walsh, who has been in his position for quite some time now. And city voters recently agreed to undo the salary cap that was placed on him by the firefighters union with that election. He's now facing I would say a relatively small deficit of $30 million in a $1 billion plus budget. That to me is not a rounding error, but it's not a crisis. I know it's going to grow more in the second year, but even then it probably represents less than 5% of the budget. There's been no public conversation from City Hall about how to achieve a constitutionally mandated balanced budget. The city's obligated by law to do that. Let me suggest that maybe attrition and other cuts in the civilian staff population would be easier than cutting services to the public, but there hasn't been any conversation about that. And I wonder if you were mayor and you're going to have a new council, whether there would be any push to the city manager of economizing on hiring.
The last thing I would want to do is cut jobs. I mean, I don't want to go there. I think there are other places that we can create efficiencies. Again, I go back to the example of buying power and combining purchasing opportunities with all of our government entities here. We were just talking earlier about having 2 library systems. Why can't you just put all library systems into the Alamo Community College District and let them handle it? We get out of the business of libraries and we focus, on what we really should be doing, which is basic services. So I think that the one thing I look forward to the most with Eric is working with him on getting more creative, bringing outside my experience from business and marrying the two. Government obviously is not a business, but it should be run with the discipline of a business. And I bring that to the table. So let's get creative on how to do that. But I wouldn't want to look at cutting jobs. I'd want to look at cutting inefficiencies, wasteful spending, because at the end of the day, the prospect of this deficit, the first thing that comes into my mind is public safety, fire, police, EMS. We're not touching that. No matter what the deficit is, we're not touching it. And so I don't want that to be a threat to our public safety. So guess what? Go find efficiency somewhere else because this is off limits. We can't go there. If anyone were to go there, our city would go into a death spiral because then our crime would go up, the inefficiencies of not having enough, fire, EMS folks out there, first responders. And then it wouldn't allow me to go out and sell San Antonio because people would see San Antonio as a dangerous place or a place where the EMS doesn't arrive on time. So we can't do that. And so I will protect, firefighters, EMS, making sure that police have what they need. And then we look at other stuff like parks. County and city are running parks. Can we just get along and have one park system, one library system? And the list is long.
City-county consolidation would make a lot of people happy out there that don't think it'll ever happen. And, you just saw the elbows between the city and county on the library system as Bibliotech was developed. And I would be all for that. That would enshrine you as a mayor if you were able to accomplish any city-county consolidation.
Tell you what, we'll start with one concept. I like the library approach. Maybe we'll start with libraries. And why would you put libraries at the ACCD? I mean, they're an academic institution. They're
at the Alamo colleges.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you just say, Mike, here, you get funding for it, but right now we've got double funding. Let's consolidate our library system so people can still enjoy their libraries. No one's going to take that away, but it's going to make the city more efficient because we're in the business of providing basic services and the ACCD is in the business of providing academic services. And I would put libraries under academic, same thing with other stuff. And, I'll dive deep with that, but, I will work with Peter Sakai. We're friends.
Bexar County Judge.
And with the commissioners. It's time that we start really a true collaboration because this is about the greater good. I'm in it for the greater good, not for any particular faction. And so we got to make sure that we find those efficiencies. And look, that's kind of how I built my career is fixing things. I'm a fixer.
We're entering the public phase of what I would call the public phase of Project Marble. City Council in their last meeting approved adding the sports and entertainment district to what we're calling now the Convention Center Complex, which is this, in my mind, spectacular idea or vision to dramatically accelerate the redevelopment of Hemisphere, bring into the Alamo Dome with that, connect it with the Land Bridge, keep our convention center complex the largest in the state, and with yet another expansion in addition to what we did in 2016. And it now appears that a very significant amount of the arena would be funded with this TERS that the state has allowed the city to capture some sales tax that otherwise would have gone to the state. So to me, that's going to maybe ameliorate a lot of people that were concerned about how much are we going to pay, how much are the Spurs going to pay, how much the county, and it almost looks like a much more feasible deal now to me. But I wonder how you see that as we sort of move past the city council vote and start to get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me address, there's a lot of misinformation coming from my opponent's campaign that I had agreed to giving 50% of, taxpayer money. again, just campaign rhetoric. I never did that. It was a questionnaire that was put in front of me. What my intent is to show that we really need to look at best practices, what has worked and what hasn't worked in other cities with other stadiums, other arenas, and let's use that as a starting point. And so for me, this is a project that could take San Antonio in a much different direction, in a positive direction, game-changing direction. We need to continue to become the tourist hub of Texas, particularly on the convention visitors side. I want to be the best convention site in the country where meeting planners fight to get in here. And when we have a long wait list of conventions coming here, let's get to that point. But we're not going to get to that point if we don't have the amenities around it, like an entertainment district. The Spurs being downtown, extremely important. I want to fix the tower. The tower needs a lot of help. I want to fix the Riverwalk. The Riverwalk, I'm not saying it's in disrepair, but it's well on its way to being in disrepair. We need to let's liven up those things that make the city great and bring a lot of economic impact here. And then let's stop vilifying the Alamo Dome. Look, the Alamo Dome delivers. It just delivered $400 million worth of economic impact on just the Final Four. I don't know how much did that thing cost, $150 million? I don't know what it was.
It was about 190 at the time.
It's paid for itself multiple times over. So let's stop saying that the Alamo Dome isn't going to work. We need to maintain and upgrade all these facilities. I'm not a big fan of the Critter Bridge, by the way, that they proposed.
The Critter Bridge is Hardburger Park. This is a human bridge.
I call this a Critter Bridge too. Anyway, that's a lot of money for a bridge, I'm not saying that we would tune it out, but let's focus. What would be the priority? Priority for me would be convention center and arena, and then entertainment district. Those are on the same side, needed, another hotel there, making sure that we turn it into a world-class destination, along with whatever's going to happen at the Western Hemisphere and La Villita. We've got $500 million worth of improvement at Alamo, at the Alamo, so all that is already working. We got the new hotel.
So on the west side, the ballpark coming for the mission over there.
Yeah, the ballpark over there. I helped create the Zona Cultural around Market Square. We got to continue to push that westwardly. I see some really good development on the west side. I would love to create a Conjunto or Tejano Walk of Fame into the west side. Why wouldn't we do that? I want to have live music in these venues along these avenues on the west side. You just pick every restaurant and ask every restaurant owner to play live music, Tejano, Conjunto. Let's think big, and it doesn't really take that much. It just takes a concerted effort with a vision that will get us there. So there's a lot of stuff we could do downtown. But let me tell you this one last thing on Project Marvel. First of all, the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to change the name, and we might re-envision it a little bit. But Project Marvel needs to benefit every district. It can't just be District 1 or 2. So what I'm proposing is that the revenue that comes from the arena needs to be put into a fund and that is earmarked for every district, divided into 10 equal parts, but it will only be used for infrastructure and public safety. And that way every council person gets those funds that will go to their district just for those two things, because those are the two most important things, and those are the two things that are needed the most. And then that way everybody in the city wins. It's not just a play for downtown. It allows everybody in the city to take advantage of this wonderful opportunity.
You'll have to negotiate hard with the Spurs, Rolando. If they get the same model they have with the county, they took responsibility for the operational costs in return for being able to manage the arena, handle all the bookings, benefit from the concessions and parking. And so it would have to be a very different negotiated deal here in Hemisphere.
That's where my years and years of negotiation will come in. I'm good at that. And, I'd like to sit down with them and say, look, if this is going to be an arena financed by visitor money or whatever we end up doing, and the taxpayers need to get their return on their investment, 100% return. And the way they'll see that is through the scheme that I just laid out, is every district gets money for infrastructure and public safety in equal parts.
Rolando, one of the things that perplexes me about you, even disappointed me a little bit, because you're the American dream to me. I'm second generation immigrant families from French Canada. You're first generation, born in Sonora, Mexico, obviously had some parents that were, completely committed to building a better life for their family. And it's the great American story, right? And one generation later, here's a guy with an attorney, multiple advanced degrees, making a huge impact in the state and city, now running for mayor. And yet when I heard you talk about immigration, I think it was at the San Antonio Report Greater Chamber debate with Gina Ortiz Jones, it was mostly focused on deporting criminal aliens. And I think you have a handle on the data as well as I do. The number of immigrants who are criminal is probably equivalent to the number of citizens who are criminal, which is to say a very small minority, but they have an outsized impact, but still they're a very small number. Whereas hundreds of thousands of immigrants have come through this city and were processed. We didn't ask for them, but first in the Trump administration, then in the Biden administration, you had these vast numbers of asylum seekers trying to cross the border or crossing the border. And we became the gateway and processed those people on their way, to the next flight or bus ride to wherever they were going. And kudos to the city for how we did it. We didn't even know if we were going to get reimbursed for a long time. But we are a city where hundreds of thousands of people trace their heritage to Mexico by one generation or two or three generations. And we have many people who are Spanish language dominant, Mexican culture dominant, and they're living in fear over what's going on in our country with ICE, whether they're citizens or they're non-citizens. And it looks to me like you would move away from a more empathetic position if you were mayor. That it's kind of been the tradition here in our city of being open arms and maybe more of a law enforcement, more aligned with Washington and what they're doing. But let me give you the floor to clarify where you are on that.
Sure. Well, first of all, yes, I'm an immigrant. My parents waited 10 years to get our documents so that we can come over. So,
they came over legally.
Of course, yeah. We were here legally. My dad submitted whatever paperwork it was, and it took 10 years to get that. And that's when we finally came over to El Paso from Ciudad Juarez. We have been attracting immigrants, legal or otherwise, for decades for selfish reasons here, because we need people to work in jobs that a lot of Americans won't take.
And you recognize that as a business person, that the economy needs immigrants, right?
Not just as a business person, but I started my legal career as an immigration lawyer.
There you go.
So talk about empathy. I have the empathy. And I know the struggles, and I know the reasons immigrants come here. And I don't judge whether they came here legally or not, particularly those that have come here in the past that have been here. We've asked them to work for us. We've embedded them into our economy, into our society. They pay taxes.
Their kids are dreamers.
Kids are dreamers. I consider myself to be a dreamer, not because we have, I don't have documentation, but because I had nothing to do with my parents' decision to bring me here. I was 9 years old. So I'm kind of a dreamer, and I want the dreamers, I want their situation to get fixed quickly, okay? Because we need them to stay here. Now, this whole issue of Gina saying that I want to deputize police officers to be ICE agents, that's baloney, right? I've never even said that.
And they're not going to do that.
I think that's offensive to our police officers, by the way, that they would be manipulated.
I think Chief McManus has charted a very sensible course on that issue from the beginning.
He's been very clear. He has to follow the law. First of all, sanctuary cities are illegal in Texas, right. And you know that. I'm not going to break the law. And the thing is that both Sheriff Salazar and McManus have come out and said they are going to cooperate with federal officials because they have to.
But that doesn't make them ICE officers.
That's correct. And so for her to say that I want to deputize, it's ridiculous. Again, going back to those personal attacks on my character and my integrity. But here's the reality of it. When I say that I do want criminal aliens to be deported, I mean it. But right now, a lot of people are living in fear because I think a lot of it is people stoking fear. Nobody is deporting anyone if they're not haven't already been received a deportation order. That's who they're looking for.
I think a lot of the people that were told you're okay until your asylum hearing are suddenly finding out they're not okay, and they're going to be on a plane to God knows where.
Well, if you came here under asylum, I believe, and I said this the other night, you should get your due process. You should have the opportunity to stand in front of an officer or a judge so they can hear your case.
That's absolutely true.
Okay.
Yeah.
The problem there is that 90% of the cases are getting denied because they don't qualify.
Well, that's always been the case. People want economic asylum more than political in many cases, and the law doesn't.
So if they're living in fear, it's fear that their case isn't going to qualify. Now, people who have been here for a long time without documentation, who have been law-abiding and family people and the kind of people we want, they should not be living in fear. And they're not deporting those folks. I'm telling you right now, that's not happening. The only people who are getting deported are those that have already been deemed deportable or criminals. And the fact that the other folks are scared is because people are just stoking these, rumors about that happening. The other day I heard that these babies that were U.S. citizens got deported. Well, they didn't get deported. It was their moms, and the moms chose to take them with them. So the babies could have stayed. We don't deport U.S. citizens, right? So there's a lot of misconception going out there. But just to make my position clear is that first and foremost, immigrants are human beings. And they come here for the same reasons our ancestors came here, and I came here. My parents brought us here. We're a country of laws, so we have to abide by the law. But we also have to recognize that the vast majority of the people that are here were drawn here for the prospect of a job, and we've given them jobs. We've welcomed them here indirectly. So we have to fix that issue first, and that's where our immigration system is broken. And then we hear about, all these attempts to fix our immigration laws. Well, we haven't been able to do that. So we have to fix immigration laws first. We have to work on guest worker programs because we do need workers. So it's a matter of fixing, but that's a federal issue.
I hope if you do win the mayor's race, Rolando, that you'll be able to send a public message to people to say, come out of your fear and drop it.
I'll say it right now. Come out of your fear. You have nothing to fear.
You say that, but we have a Republican president who is challenging the 14th Amendment and wants to deport.
That's another whole issue. Yeah, I don't agree with that. Look, the people that are being deported are criminals who have an actual record, and those that have already gone to a judge and the judge has deported them. That's all. Those are all the only individuals that are being addressed right now. Whether that changes or not, I don't know, but I will fight that because that we can't have that. We've got to make sure that we get rid of the individuals that have already had their day in court.
All right. Rolando Pablos, candidate for mayor. Thanks for coming on to Big City, Small Town.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much, Bob.
Please share this episode with friends and colleagues, and do sign up for Monday Musings, our weekly newsletter at bigcitysmalltown.com. Big City Small Town is brought to you by Weston Urban, building the city our children want to call home, and Geekdom, where startups are born and smart ideas become businesses. Our producer is Corey Ames, video by Erica Rempel, and sound engineering by Alpi de la Garza of Sound Crane Audio. We will see you next week.